Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first Women in Retail Talks podcast. In today's episode, we're excited to offer highlights from a presentation Denise Yohn gave at our Girl Talks event in San Francisco. Author of the best-selling book, What Great Brands Do, the 7 brand-building principles that separate the best from the rest, Denise explains 3 of those principles that all great brands have in common. Today's podcast is sponsored by Connexity, a technology-driven marketing solutions provider. If you need to understand your customer, target new prospects, or drive sales, Connexity's suite of products deliver results. Learn more about Connexity and how their technology and service bring data to life by visiting www.connexity.com. And now, on to the show.
Great brands are doing things that will attract investors, employees, and customers. And so I want to help you get started on doing that even right now in our short time today. So I'm just going to kind of jump right into things. And I have to first explain that I'm not going to be talking about branding, okay? And actually branding, if you don't mind me for just a second, it's kind of a problematic word if you really think about where the word branding came from. You remember, it's kind of like way back when people had cattle and ranches, and you know, they needed to make sure that no one was going to steal their cows. So they would take this like sharp point, they would take the sharp pointy iron and practically torture these cows by like sticking their iron into this burning flame, searing it on the cow, just to make sure that people knew whose cow it was, right? That's what branding means, and it's insane to think that branding works as a business concept today. So we're not going to be talking about branding as in putting your stamp on something to show that you own it. We're going to be talking about brand building as in developing a powerful instrument that creates value for your organization. All right? And you know, the reason why I focus on that as a first point is because you can't operate with your brand as something separate from your business, as if it's off to the side. Quite frankly, that's irresponsible. You know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, we've got this great brand idea, we'll put it out in the marketplace. If people don't like it, we'll pivot. Okay, now I hear that in startups, but I also hear that with a lot of established companies who operate as if their brands are so incidental to the actual business that they're operating that they can kind of change their brand whenever they feel like it. But a brand is not an image that you can change like a pair of clothes. And in fact, a corporate brand makeover is only going to be successful if it's taken after substantive changes have happened in the business itself. And that's because your brand is what you do and how you do it. Now, if you go to business school, if you've been to business school, they'll tell you the kind of like the more official definition goes something like a brand is a bundle of values and attributes that define the value you deliver to customers and the way you do business. I like the shorter version. A brand is what you do and how you do it. And as such, your brand should drive, align, and guide everything that you and your organization do. And if you conceive of and use your brand in this way, it has so much power because everyone who works on your brand shares one common understanding of your vision for the brand, the role you want to play in the world, and how you're meant to play it. It makes it ruthlessly clear how to spend your resources so you don't waste your time, money, and energy on things that aren't right for you and your future. So how do you ensure that you are developing that kind of brand that is strong enough and clear enough that you can use it to drive, align, and guide everything that you do? Well, you start by identifying disconnects or gaps between the way that you use your brand and the way great brands use theirs. And so this is an assessment that I use with my clients. It's something that is too long for us to go in detail today. And it's something that you want to be very thorough and thoughtful about. So I just want to focus on one question for us to talk about today. But I do want to make this available to you because I know that it can be helpful to you, and I want you to be able to take it back to your offices. You should go through the assessment, have your colleagues go through the assessment. I think it'll be very helpful to you. So if you want to go to this URL And there'll be a drop-down menu that can tell you that you can select, I want the assessment. I will email that to you. So it's bit.ly/WGBD, which stands for What Great Brands Do, _engage. And if you don't get this URL now, don't worry about it. I'm going to have it up again because there's a couple other tools I want to give you also. But I want to just get into this one question that I want you to think about for today. And that is about your key brand stakeholders. Okay, so when I say brand stakeholders, I mean everyone who works on your business. Your employees, your executives, suppliers, distributors, everyone, okay? I want you to think about them as a whole, and I want you to think about whether they tend to be on the one side of the scale where they tend to disagree about what's on brand and what's off, or do they tend to be on the 10 side of the scale where they consistently share one common understanding of your brand and how to interpret and reinforce it? I want you to just think about it for a moment. How would you rate your brand stakeholders as a whole? Should I ask if anyone gave your brand stakeholders a 10? Okay. Would anyone admit to giving your stakeholders a 1? Okay. You're probably somewhere in the middle. So let me tell you that if you gave your brand stakeholders like a 8 or above, you're in pretty good shape. But if you are at a 7 or below, you're basically saying that you don't have the focus and clarity and alignment that you need to be successful in today's cluttered competitive marketplace. Might have been okay in the past, but today you need to have that clarity of purpose and focus on execution and excellence in order to really stand out and create value for your customers. So this is a hard question, but hopefully I'm starting to get your wheels turning and thinking about how you might be able to get more power out of your brand, how you might be able to have a stronger brand. And so I just want to share with you some of the insights that I learned when I did the research for my book, What Great Brands Do. So I did lots of research, lots of interviews, drew upon my experience, and I witnessed the power of great brands and identified 7 actions that all great brands take. And because we only have a short period of time today, I'm really only going to go into 3 of them, and then I'll describe the other 4 just so that you kind of get a little bit of a flavor. But then I have to say that actually that there's an 8th action, okay? And the 8th is really the most important one, but you can't really get to the 8th until you've done the 7. So I will take you through the first 7 pretty quickly, and then I'll end on the 8th, okay? So I'm going to jump right into it and start with the first principle I want to share with you, which is that great brands start inside. Meaning great brands start brand building by cultivating a strong brand-led culture. Now, when I say the word culture, you might think that I'm talking about like motivation and inspiration and all that kind of feel-good soft stuff, but I'm not. Okay? What I'm talking about is putting your brand at the center of your organization and using it to guide everything that you do. Again, your brand is what you do and how you do it. And the difference, I think, will become clear when we contrast 2 very popular internet brands, Netflix and Zappos. Okay? Both of these brands are very highly regarded for their corporate cultures, but they differ in the way they apply those cultures and the difference that the cultures actually make on the customer. At Netflix, culture and customer experience seem to be 2 separate endeavors, whereas Zappos, they seem to be closely and clearly linked. Okay? So here's what I mean. At Netflix, they have all sorts of values, and one of them is communication. And they define communication as you listen well instead of reacting fast so that you truly understand. Great value, right? And that may be the way that the people at Netflix deal with each other, but you may recall a few years ago when Netflix tried to introduce this, they tried to separate their streaming from their rental business, got all sorts of flack, right? I gotta think that if they used that value of communication, of listening well to their customers, they would have developed a solution that would have been much better accepted by them. Now contrast that to Zappos. How many of you shop at Zappos? Quite a few. Okay, if you don't, you're definitely missing out. This is just my little 5-second commercial for Zappos. But the Zappos, they have these core values, and their top core value is we deliver wow through service. And they say in order to deliver wow through service, we need to do things that are a little unconventional and innovative. And so they do all sorts of unconventional, innovative things in their corporate culture. If any of you have ever had a chance to go on one of their tours of their corporate offices, you know what I mean. It's like crazy in there. They let people decorate their offices however they like. It's kind of almost like a circus, a lot of fun. They publish a culture book that their employees write, not their leaders, okay? So all sorts of innovative, unconventional things in the culture internally, but they also do all sorts of innovative things and unconventional things in their customer experience. So for example, if you are a customer and you call up Zappos to order a pair of shoes and they're out of stock, that customer service rep will actually research up to 3 competitive sites to find those shoes for you and then direct you to that competitor site so you can buy those shoes. That's delivering wow, and that's unconventional and innovative, right? It makes no sense to have a purpose and values that inspire and engage your employees if that is not inextricably linked with how you inspire and engage your customers. That's why Zappos and other great brands put their brand values at the center of the organization and they use them to shape their culture and their customer experience. So you can apply this action to your organization by making sure that you have a differentiating purpose and values for your brand. And then you want to cultivate that culture both so that you're supporting that culture internally, but then that you're actually delivering great, extraordinary customer experiences based on those values. A lot of times that means that you're going to have to be working with HR groups and other groups that really bring all of these different elements together, but it really is the way that you start brand building inside, like other great brands do. So that's the first action that I want to talk about. The second action I want to talk about is great brands don't chase customers. They don't squander their precious brand equity by chasing after elusive audiences. And this action is why in the energy drink category, Red Bull is a far more profitable brand than Monster Energy. And you could say that profitability is probably the strongest indicator of brand power, right? So the reason why Red Bull is far more profitable than Monster is because Red Bull has cultivated this kind of exclusive premium brand positioning, and they've developed this brand personality that's somewhat polarizing and alienating in a way, and that differs significantly from the low price mass market strategy that Monster Energy has put out there. And the reason why Red Bull has done this is because they know that when you stand for something clearly, some people are going to hate you, but others are going to love you. And those who love you are going to buy you more often, and pay more for you. So Red Bull, like other great brands, doesn't chase customers. They attract like-minded customers by being very clear about what they stand for and then shining that brand identity kind of like a lighthouse. So it's intense, it's consistent, it's salient. And consumers find enormous appeal with brands that operate like lighthouses because you, as a customer, you can decide whether or not that brand is for you or not. And as a company, when you embrace and celebrate what you are, what you uniquely are, you're going to attract those customers who are going to be your most profitable, loyal ones anyway. So you really want to operate with this lighthouse mentality. And so here's just a quick assessment you can do. I won't ask you to raise your hands this time, but ask yourself, are you operating with this lighthouse mentality and this lighthouse approach to your brand, or are you chasing customers? Have you clearly defined what you stand for, even though that might turn some people off? And have you cultivated a unique personality that is not going to appeal to everyone, not all people, but the right people for your brand? I was kind of thinking about some clues that you might be chasing customers are at the first sign of weakness in your business or softness in your sales, you immediately drop your price or run price promotions, or you run advertising that really could appeal to anyone because you're hesitant to say anything or do anything that might turn someone off. Or you design your customer experience so that anyone who walks through your door, or anyone who comes to your website feels comfortable. Those are some clues that you're actually chasing customers as opposed to celebrating and embracing your unique brand. So I'd encourage you, think like great brands do, shine your brand like a lighthouse, invite the world to navigate around you. The last action I want to talk about tonight is great brands sweat the small stuff. They might think big thoughts and they might do big things, but they actually sweat the small stuff in the details of the customer experience. They know that everything communicates, every touch point matters. And all the little things that you do in person for someone far outweigh the big things that you say in your advertising and your PR. The example here I want to talk about is Virgin Airlines. How many of you had a chance to fly on Virgin? Okay, quite a few, obviously, because SFO is one of their hubs. I love flying on Virgin because I think it's the ultimate expression of what the Virgin brand is all about, right? Richard Branson has made it clear that we have certain values as a company, and we're going to design our customer experiences to show you that we have those values. So one of their values is challenging convention for customer sake. So at Virgin America, they look for ways that they can actually do things differently to show that they really know what customers want and need. And so that's why, when you board the planes, they've got like the hip music and the cool lighting, and I love their safety video that has the dance routine on it. You actually pay attention to it, right? And I caught this new development they have with their boarding passes, which is brilliant. Right? I mean, at least I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where they design their boarding passes to be folded and stuck in your pocket because that's what we all do with our boarding passes, right? And they design it so that all the pertinent information is at the top here and it's large enough so us old people can actually still read it, I mean, that's a great way for them to demonstrate their value of challenging convention for customer sake. And it's a small little detail, but it speaks volumes about the way that they think about their customer experience. They know that their customer experience is their best marketing. And because they have such an extraordinary customer experience, they end up at the top of the travel website ratings and airline quality ratings report listed to them at the top for last 3 years. Fast Company named them as one of the top 50 innovative companies. And I love pointing out that, yes, an airline company can be innovative. So that's what I mean by, great brands sweat the small stuff. Now, I need to be careful because when I say sweat the small stuff, I don't want you to hear, that you're going to waste your resources trying to chase down perfection in every little opportunity. What I want you to focus on is focusing your resources on the things that make the most impact. And the way that I help my clients figure out what is the most impact is using a brand touch point wheel. This is just a template of a wheel. But basically what it is, it identifies all the different ways that someone on the outside comes into contact with your brand. And it's really interesting because whenever you put together one of these wheels, a small fraction of those touch points are the advertising and marketing touch points. Now all the rest of them are your products, your service, your salespeople, your fulfillment, etc. And so I use this kind of touch point wheel not only because it helps my clients understand all the different touch points, but then it identifies the internal groups or departments or processes that impact those touch points. And once we develop one of these things, what's great is then you can use industry data or customer surveys to determine which ones of those touch points make the most impact on our customers. And then you can ensure that those priority touch points are working hard and working together to deliver the brand promise. So often when I present this, people are like, I want to make one of these things. So I actually put together a worksheet that shows you how to make a brand touch point wheel. And so you can get the worksheet and the template, again, if you go to this URL. And I think it's probably one of the first things that I encourage people to do when they go down this journey of brand building, because I think it's very eye-opening. So when you build your brand, when you design your customer experiences with this level of discipline and detail, you're doing what great brands do. You're sweating the small stuff. Okay, so those are the 3 actions that I have time to share with you, and I just got the high five, 5-minute high sign, so I'll wrap up shortly. I do just want to kind of go through the other 4 just so that you can fill in the blanks a little bit. One of them is avoid selling products. Great brands avoid selling products because they know it's far more effective to seduce people through emotion than to push products on them or to focus all on product features and technologies or to focus on making claims. That emotional connection is really powerful. Great brands ignore trends. This one always surprises people because you might think that it's your job to stay up on the latest developments and follow the trends. But what I've observed is that great brands actually ignore trends. And they actually try to identify emerging consumer attitudes and behaviors that are way out in the distance and maybe in areas that seem very unrelated to their own category, but they ask themselves, what's going on out there and how can we actually address and advance a solution that meets those needs? And that's how they actually create their own cultural movement and get everyone else to be following them. So that's great brands ignore trends. There's also great brands commit and stay committed. This is about being ruthlessly clear about what your priorities are and then be willing to say no to anything that detracts from it. I think that we as business people and specifically as retailers are never at a loss for opportunities. There's always cool things we can do, more things we can add, more features, more functionality, more elements of the customer experience. I think one of the most powerful things you can do is say no.
Thanks for listening, and thanks again to today's sponsor, Connexity. Be sure to visit www.connexity.com to learn more.